Wrestling is super dangerous, and of course The Undertaker of all people summed this up on his podcast recently, where he said you're only ever 2 moves away from potentially having a life-altering incident. He's totally correct. Most of the time, people are lucky enough to walk away with just minor injuries, but that's not the same for all wrestlers. So let's make sure we keep their memories alive and pay them all the respect by running through some of the most scary injuries of all time. Number 10, Madat Moss lands on his head. I miss Madat Moss, and he got released from WWE last year alongside his partner Emma, but I always thought he had a huge upside. We never really tapped into it. Moss was also an awesome athlete, which is why when we got to the Elimination Chamber in 2022, when he was taking on Drew McIntyre, they probably had a chat and he said to Drew, hey man, when you do your Alabama Slam, I'll make sure I go totally crazy here, which he did do, but my gosh, he overshot it. And when he did land, his head and neck went straight into the mat. I'm not kidding you either. Ask anybody who saw this live, there was a genuine worry that he could be dead. Now somehow he did walk away totally fine, but do not pretend this wasn't a lucky mistake. And if you look down on the floor, you could actually see the indentation in the mat. So again, this is just one where you go, oh, well, thank goodness for that. Everybody needs to be damn careful. Number 9, Matt Hardy's terrifying fall. September 5th, 2020, Matt Hardy was taking on Sammy Guevara on an AEW pay-per-view in a Broken Rules match. Now, I massively appreciated this because it was the pandemic era, so whatever we could do to have a distraction, well, it was most appreciated. At one point too, they climbed atop a cherry picker and you could see what was going to go on here, because if you did look to the ground, there certainly did seem to be a nice gimmicked area for them to fall into. But again, these things are always with a certain element of danger, and when they did fall down, Matt Hardy's head whacked right into the concrete floor. So this really was another one where things could have been so much worse, and in the end Hardy only had to take a couple of months off. And it does bring up the debate, should we stop wrestling matches if we do believe somebody to be in trouble? My answer to that is yes. I know the wrestlers wouldn't want this and it would disrupt the flow of a show, but I don't care about that. I just want people to be healthy, happy, and to get back in the ring as soon as they can. Number 8, Big E. So this one may have actually ended Big E's in-ring career. Fair play to that guy, because every time he talks about this, not only does he go out of his way to say don't blame Ridge Holland, these things just happen in wrestling, but he talks about how good his life is and how he has a pain-free existence. Just gonna say it, I love that guy. It was way back on SmackDown in March 2022 though, when he was taking on Ridge Holland. They went to the outside and what looked like a completely innocent overhead suplex, well yeah, it ended really badly. Because Big E did indeed land on his head where he fractured his C1 and C6 vertebrae, and ever since then he has been trying to get back into the ring, but in a recent interview he did update us. At the moment, he still doesn't know. Now, of course, I would love to see him return one day, but not at the expense of his health. And again, if you were looking for the power of positivity, just go and watch a Big E interview. That dude is something else. Number 7, Brock Lesnar's shooting star press. Now, most people know of this one, and I genuinely think it's one of the scariest things to ever happen in a wrestling ring. It all went down during the WrestleMania 19 main event between Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar, and let's not forget, before all of this, everybody was worried about Kurt, because he was walking into this with a broken neck. And no, I'm not kidding, you can look it up. Given that it was the show of shows though, everybody decided, oh Brock, you should do that shooting star press you used to do in developmental, because ever since he had been called up to the main roster, he had not done it. Now let's not forget that Brock Lesnar is totally huge, and given that it was at the very end of the night, there was sweat everywhere, and when he leaped off the top of the turnbuckle, he did indeed slip, and he landed right on his head. It's absolutely terrifying afterwards because Kurt Angle is quite literally screaming at Brock Lesnar, telling him what to do, so he is able to hit the F5 and win the World Championship. And there's also footage of the aftermath of this, and if you want to see someone that is totally knocked out, well, very unfortunately you can. Now everybody has always said because Lesnar was so jacked that essentially saved his life, and that's why you will never see anything like this again. You'd be unsurprised to hear I'm totally on board with that, because when you did see this for the first time, my gosh, it was awful. Number 6, Sid's career-ending leg break. So Sid Justice didn't want to do this, and that makes it all so much worse. Now, rumorly it was Johnny Laurinaitis who told Sid at the 2001 Sid pay-per-view, oh, you should do something off the rope. And even though Sid was like, I don't want to do that, he was forced into it. And then surprise, surprise, when he was up there, he felt totally uncomfortable. So he did leap off and his ankle just snapped in two. And rather than watch that, go and look at the reactions of all the other wrestlers, their faces go white because it was so damn disgusting. He required so much surgery after this too, including a 17-inch rod being stuck into that thing to give him support. And while he did come back in 2004, he was never the same again. So yeah, this essentially ended his career. It's also so totally avoidable because why do we have a near 7-footer jumping off the ropes? Sometimes just do the things that you know you can do safely. Number 5, the Danberry Fall. This one caused a proper stink for the right reasons. I mean, what were we doing? It all happened in March 2000 at the Living Dangerously pay-per-view courtesy of ECW. And for some reason we were doing a scaffold match. It was between New Jack and Vic Grimes as well, which means they did climb up onto this ridiculous platform. And unsurprisingly, when they were up there, Vic was like, actually, now I am looking down, I don't want to do this anymore. And because New Jack was totally unhinged, he was like, well, sorry pal, we are going, and basically dragged him off to fall on all the tables below. But again, there's a target there, but it's pretty damn hard to hit. They missed, and they crumpled on the floor, and Vic Grimes actually smashed right into New Jack's head. So honestly couldn't have gone any worse, and New Jack was there permanently blinded in one eye, and Tommy Dreamer, who was watching this backstage, has said time and time again in interviews, I honestly thought they were dead. There is so much wrong with this, because even if you are about to do a stunt in wrestling, if one of the guys decides they don't want to do it, just call it off. I don't care if you do look stupid. I don't want anyone to be blind in one eye. All of this scares the shit out of me. Before Steve Austin breaks his neck. This one was so bad that it meant 6 years later, Stone Cold Steve Austin had to retire. Now in one sense, that's a massive feather in his cap, because look at the disruption he did to the entire industry in such a short time. It happened at SummerSlam 1997 though, when he was having that match against Owen Hart and a pile driver went totally wrong. It was quite clear something had gone awry instantly, because Austin just laid there, and as he told everybody afterwards, he actually thought he was paralyzed. Somehow he was still able to win with a roll-up, and sure, it is the worst pin you've ever seen in your life, but just take a step back and think about this. He had a broken neck. How the flub did he do it in the first place? Given that Steve thought at one point he would never walk again, it was incredible that he did come back after 3 months. But actually, in hindsight, maybe he should have taken more time to recover, because you know the deal. He would have been on top of the world. Then very sadly, he'd have to go away to deal with more injuries. Now, he was so damn smart, he did change his style, so he was more of a brawler, which actually suited the Attitude Era perfectly, and maybe turned him into an even bigger success. But this just goes to show he was a wrestling genius. But even then, with everything he did achieve, do you want anybody to go through this? The answer is no. No, you do not. Hello friends, do not adjust your YouTube devices, but here is the truth. There was a glitch in this video, and there's no point in me trying to recreate what I did, because it was like a month ago, and you'll look at me and go, Simon, you look completely different. So all I'm gonna tell you is Steve Austin's broken neck is one of the worst things that has ever happened in pro wrestling history, and if you are a wrestler, please take care. And also, number 3, Darren Drozdov also breaks his neck. So we will effortlessly go back into the video where it did stop glitching out, but again, I just want to point out too, Droz was a wonderful human being, an inspiration to us all, so maybe every single day we should wake up and be a little bit more appreciative of what we have. Right, now we go back to old Simon. Thanks as always for watching. It genuinely was one of the worst things that ever happened in professional wrestling, but you would not know that if you ever saw a Droz interview, because he was just so magnanimous about the situation and would always say, hey man, it wasn't D'Lo Brown's fault. It did happen in October 1999 when these two were facing each other, when Brown went to do his powerbomb that he did every single match. As they both talked about, there was some slipping or there was some sweat they weren't ready for. When Darren did land right on his head, like a lot of people in this list, he broke his neck. Because it did fracture 2 discs in his neck, he was left paralyzed. Very sadly, he did pass away in 2023. But once again, he was just the best dude. What an inspiration for anyone going through anything that's a struggle. Could learn a lot from Darren Drozdov. Number 2, Mitsuharu Misawa dies in the ring. So this stuff is so hard to talk about, but if we do forget about it, we don't do justice to the person that basically changed the wrestling business. Because Misawa was genuinely one of the best to ever do it, but also these days a great example why rest and recovery are so important. There's no need to rush back. It only takes a few matches to see the severe impact he put on his head and neck every time he did step in the ring. But this was during a time in the early 90s when All Japan Wrestling was everything, as they popularized the King's Road style. As we soon came to learn though, this came at a huge cost, because after years of just going through such punishment, Misawa did have a match and he took the most basic suplex you'd ever seen. But when he landed, I guess he just took one bump too many and his neck did break, and the man passed away. This was June 13th, 2009, and I would implore you to never track it down, because you just see a bunch of pandemics run into the ring, and you can feel it in your bones. Something has gone terribly wrong. He shall always be remembered as one of the GOATs though, because his influence did change the entire industry. This is totally not the way that he should have gone out. Number 1, Owen Hart. So it's another one where it's so important to keep the memory alive, because forget everything else, what we should always talk about is that Owen Hart was a damn good, wonderful human being. I mean, there is not one bad story about him, because all of his peers say how awesome he was, and if you do have some time today, go on YouTube and just hear about some of the pranks he's pulled. Some of them will make you laugh out loud. Owen Hart was basically a giant child, and he was all the better for it. We of course all know what happened at Over the Edge 1999 when he was being lowered down by a harness as the Blue Blazer, when something went awry and he dropped from a great height, and what did he do on the way down? He told everyone to get out of the way, because that's the kind of dude Owen Hart was. The fact the pay-per-view continued is genuinely one of the worst decisions of all time, and I'll never be able to get my head around. And it's why we should always go out of our way to make sure we're watching Owen's matches and just give all the praise to AEW, because they have the Owen Hart Cup, which I think is damn important. He just deserves all the goodwill that we are able to muster up, and yeah, maybe take a few seconds today to think about his friends and family too. Not sure how any of them actually dealt with this. Now to try and put some positivity in this video, just go and share some good stories about all the rest that we mentioned today in the comments below. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. If you'd like to click another video on the screen, there will be one there right now. Otherwise, I send you good cheer, my friends. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you on the next one.